Welcome back to Mackenzie Woodworking. So what we're building today is a chair in the style of an Adirondack chair. It's not exactly Adirondack style, but so here we are. And the first thing I've done is drawn out the leg strut, and they'll be taking a lot of force. So that's from the front to the back. And if you've noticed the vertical back for the backrest, it's offset from the seat, so it's not 90 degrees, it's offset by 5 degrees. So once I've done the mathematics on that, I've transferred that to a piece of cypress, 1 inch thick. Some people call it yellow cedar as well. This is a really good product to use on anything that's going to be out in the weather. It really weathers well and it's strong, has a really oily surface to it, and resists rot as well. The little bugs don't like it. So here I am just comparing it to my pattern. And if you notice, the front will be at 22.5 inches. So what I'll do is just after the bandsaw, take off the bandsaw marks and make sure that all 4 legs are the same, especially on the seat. So I'll be laying them all up on top of each other and make sure that they're all right. And these horizontal sanders work really good for this. And then once I was done with that, just brought it over to the drum sander, and we'll get them sanded off. I sand everything down to 120, so I'm just going to put a radius edge on it, a 1/8 radius edge. I go all the way around on these pieces. It just stops them if they're being carried around or moved or anything, not to have a sharp edge on them, and they won't break off. It's just as easy to go all the way around. And then I'll just take some 120 paper and then soften them up and check for any defects or anything. And whenever if you're going to build a project like this, make sure that your leg struts are good and solid. I have a couple of tight knots in there, but the timber is really good and solid. So what I'm doing is just checking the angle on the back and where I'm going to have the placement of my vertical fronts. So as you can see, the legs going down towards the back, and that piece on the front where I've got a clamp down will be the vertical leg coming up. And so I'll be cutting 4 of those at 14 inches. They're 2 inches wide. And I'll just mark that out. I think I want to get a pencil. Probably have one stuck behind my ear. So I'll just mark that out, and once I get that marked, I'll mark the area that I'm going to drill the holes, and then I'll gang drill them all. I'll drill the legs, struts, and the vertical pieces as well. You see here I've got all the holes all drilled, and what I've done is when you're doing this, I have a small T at the top. I'm just showing you there, so I mark them all out in the top. It's easy to get confused, so when you have them all laid out, just put a small T at the top or an X or whatever you want to use. The holes, the bolts I'm using are 2.5 inch 5/16 carriage bolts, and I drill the holes 5/16 as well. I don't want any movement in these, and a lot of people will drill the holes oversized, but on the end of a carriage bolt there's a little square hex head, and you want that to bite into the wood, so you usually want to drill the exact size of the bolt. And once I get these on, I'll just get them tapped in again, and I'm just going to fit all these loosely and stand them all up, and I'll do them in pairs to make sure that I've got the right and the left. I'm not going to tighten them up until I get the skeleton mostly built, but I will put them together in pairs, so you can see there's the right elevation of them, and then I'll do the left elevation once. As you can see, I've got it marked the top and the outside, so I'll do one and then I'll do the other one. I'll double check and make sure that it's the same. So I'll just let you watch this, and can see I have to take a block of wood and pound them down, make sure that the square end of the bolt actually sets into the wood. And if you drill your holes too big, you think that you want more room to move, what will happen is that the carriage bolt will spin on you because there's nothing to hold it back. You can see I have to pound it quite hard to get them through. And that will just stop them from rocking back and forth. We'll just get those bolted up, and then we can lay them side by side, and then I can do the rest of the marks that I need. What I'll be doing is putting, the first thing I'll do is cut 2 spreaders, and that will be for the bottom portion of the vertical backrest that's going up. And I'll be installing that with pocket screws, and I've got marks on the leg struts, and that will be offset 5 degrees because the back of the seat is sloped back 5 degrees from the plane of the seat. So and there they are there. You can see the vertical pieces and the back support there in the bottom, and I've used pocket screws. The screws I use are a coated screw. They're porcelain coated. The ones I use are produced by Craig, and anywhere where you're working outside and everything. And I didn't want the screws or bolts going through the legs right in the center, so to keep the strength integral of the unit, I use pocket screws. And then the vertical planks going up to support the back will cover those up. You can see I've got marks just at the end of the curvature there for the seat, and that's where the vertical pieces will be going up on. So just take some pictures here as we go along to show you the skeleton works of it. And there's another piece there that I've a spreader there, and that's where the top of the bench will be. And here we're just clamped on, and I'm getting ready to drill on the other side. Any place where we're putting screws in, I countersink them, and we're using a 1 3/4" number 8 deck screw, and it's coated as well. And now we got both sides done, and we've got so the top support that supports the back of the bench and the back of the seats goes from end to end, and that's a piece that will be taking some stress as well. So I've picked up a good sturdy piece of lumber for that. You can see how it's braced against the vertical piece coming up. And at this point, the framework is actually quite strong. You can pick it up and move it around, and there's absolutely no movement at all. So just taking some shots all the way around to show you how it's put together. And you can see the back supports. We have 3 screws in that. It doesn't really take that much stress because it's being held by the front vertical leg coming up. You probably notice the bolts on the carriage bolts, they're to the inside. They'll be under the seat and not on the outside. So they're smooth on the outside. Whenever I start to put on the seat will come up through the bottom and wrap around the front, so you won't see those carriage bolts at all. And there, all the clamps are off and everything, and there's the complete framework. I'll just lay a framing square up against it so you can see the height of it and sort of get an idea of the size of it overall. There's an end view. I've made sure that the top of the legs and the horizontal pieces are parallel all the way along. And you can see I've got a framing square there to show you the height, and the top of the leg there is actually 14 inches, and the seat portion will be 14 by 14. And you can see I've cut in and notched in a couple of the vertical pieces for the back. And you can see that when you're laying it in, the spreader for between the leg struts and the top have got to be parallel. So when you screw your vertical pieces to the bottom, they're in line, top and bottom. I've just laid a ruler there so you can see the length of them. And so from the outside to the outside on the skeleton portion of it, without the tops being on the rail there, we're at 46 inches, and then it'll be just a little bit wider. Here we are, we've put on the seats. The seat portion is, I've cut them 1 inch, so they're 1 inch by 1 inch, and then I've cut the backs to suit. The two outside ones on the vertical backs are a little bit wider because I notched them up over the seat. So what I've done is we've pre-drilled and screwed everything in here, and because we're fastening them with only one screw onto the round portion of them, I don't want them to rock back and forth and eventually get loose. So I'm just using a little bit of glue, putting it into the joint, and this is just the crazy glue. I like to use Fast Cap. It's been a good glue for us. I'm using a medium one and use an accelerator on it. I'll just give that bit of a wobble and it'll help the glue go down. And what this will do is just sort of take up the gap there, and it'll stop the wood from moving back and forth. It's not really to fasten it on in any way, it's just to take the shake out of it. You see, I'm just getting into the holes that were already pre-drilled, and I'll just make sure that they're in the right place, and then I'll put some more glue in there and do the same thing. And this will just take the wobble out of it. And what's nice about this glue is that it's waterproof as well too, so any moisture on the outside isn't going to affect it, and it sets up immediately within 30 seconds after you spray on the accelerator. So I'm just putting a little bit in the void on the one that's starting on the curve there. And whenever I screw down the base of the seat, because they're curved up as well, I just ran a line all the way up it as well. And on that, I actually used, they actually produce a product called gel glue, and it'll take up to 1/8 of an inch line without collapsing on itself. So, and because I can't get into the joint here, you can see that I have to put it at the top portion of the board. And so whenever I place this in, gravity will just help it flow down into the joint. And I'll just give it a spray to get it to set up. There's just a picture of the glue that I use. I said there's a lot of different brands in the market. We've just started using this Fast Cap product, and it's been excellent for us. So as you can see, I put the top on the table there and put a little decorative piece on the front, and now I'm just putting the armrests on, and you can see in the back of it I've notched it so it goes up against the seat, and I'll just place that in. And I've just given it a rough sand, and then once we can get it mounted, then I'll go around and sand everything off smooth in all the corners. And you can see that the top is on, and I've got a little brace on the side there. We screwed that in from the other side. There's no screws in the top of the armrests. I didn't want any holes on the flat areas, so it's all fastened from the bottom, and just a couple of pin nails, and all glued down as well. And that gives you a view from the front of it. And we got Berenstain Bear there, I believe it is. He's sitting in there. And so what I'm doing is giving you a shot on the outside. So here I am just showing you one that's a conventional size and the one that we built, and you can see it's about half size. The red one was built by a international student that we had staying with us, Paul, and he is from Barcelona, and he did an excellent job of that. We just painted it this summer. And anyways, here's the two pieces. I hope you've enjoyed this project, and if you like what you've seen, please subscribe. Thank you.